Welcome back to my channel. I am here with another life story. This story is how I survived pulmonary embolism and blood clots. This takes place right after, if you haven't seen the story of me finding my mother dead, right after that, me finding out that I have lupus. So this is a continuation from the me finding out I have lupus story. So once I got out the hospital from finding out that I had lupus, the whole time I was in the hospital during my lupus stay, they gave me blood thinners. It's when you get they give you the shot in your stomach because you're not able to move because you're in the bed. And of course, in my case, because my lupus was so bad and I had a really bad flare-up that it affected every bone in my body. So I couldn't really walk. I really couldn't move. I really couldn't do much anything. But I was on a blood thinner when I was in there. I want to say probably like 2 to 3 weeks after I left the hospital, I went back to work, went back doing my normal routine. Still in pain, still on medication, trying to slow down the lupus flare that I was having. And it was still hard for me to walk and move, but I was still doing those things because, I was still going to work and taking care of a baby and everything. So one day I noticed that at work I was coughing up blood. And you know how you would just cough and mucus would come up, but it was blood. I didn't think, much of it. I think I just turned 27 years old. So I just kept going on by about life. I already knew it because of the lupus and the pain that I was in. I didn't think twice. I just thought, okay, maybe it's part of the lupus because I was having chest pains and everything. So the next day, I noticed I had a pain in the left side of my back. I mean, it hurt when I moved. Anything that I did, it hurt. I went to my father's house that day. I moved around that day. I ended up going home that night. And my baby at the time, I want to say he probably was like 8 months old or so. It was just me and him at home. So, of course, I couldn't, just get up and go to the hospital and stuff like that. I just actually laid all night long with this pain in my back, and I was waiting for my brother to actually come home. And I didn't want to call him to come home earlier or anything. He was young. He was one of those boys that was in the streets. So I just waited till he came home the next day. When he came home the next day, I told him I was going to go to the hospital and I was going to go get checked out because this pain in my back was really, really hurting me. So, I needed him to keep the baby. So I go to the emergency room and as soon as I get there, they take me straight to the back. And then I noticed my breathing was off. Like, it was like hard for me to breathe. I was like huffing and puffing. And so they took me straight to the back. And they did a CT scan, and I sat in the room. You know how you sit in the ER in the room waiting. And I noticed that all these doctors came in front of the door. So they was all looking at me. You know how they was like whispering something, and then they looked at me, and I was like, okay, what's wrong, whatever, So they come into the room. Well, the main doctor who was treating me in the ER, he came into the room. And he was like, you have a pulmonary embolism and you have a blood clot, which is what I think is a deep vein thrombosis. You have a blood clot in each of your legs. So I had one in each of my legs, and I had one that had came loose and went into my lung, and that was the pulmonary embolism. So I was like, okay, so I'm thinking to myself, you just gonna give me some medicine, I'm gonna go home. So I was like, okay, so when can I be released? And he said, huh? And I said, okay, so, when can I leave? And he said, you can't go home. And I said, well, what you mean I can't go home? He said, if you go home, you're going to die. I said, okay. So he was like, you have to stay. You have to stay here in the hospital. And then so all these doctors was coming by, and they was like, I guess because I was so young because of my age, they was like, you know, this young lady has blood clots, and they was just telling all the doctors like it was a spectacle, like, you know, like they never seen, I guess, somebody, you know, so young. So they asked me, you know, was I taking birth control? I was like, no. Then he asked you, you know, did you feel any pain in your legs? Now, because I had the pains from the lupus, I didn't know no difference. So if I had pains in my legs from having blood clots, that's, you know, that wasn't known to me. So I, of course, was admitted into the hospital, and I had immediately go on blood thinners. Now, when they took me upstairs to the room, I had to go to the restroom. And when I went to move to get up, you know, the nurse, she freaked out. She said, oh, no, you can't move. And I said, what you mean I can't move? She was like, yeah. She was like, you can't even get up to go to the bathroom. She said, because the clots that are in your legs are so large. She said that if one came loose, I would die immediately, because they wouldn't even have time to get me into surgery. And I was like, well, y'all sure do really know how to, you know, scare sister, because, you know, me not thinking that this was such a serious thing, and the fact that one heart was already in my lung. And that's what was causing the back pain. That was what was causing me to cough up the blood. That what was causing me and the rapid breathing and the hard to breathe and the chest. Because like I said, I associated chest pain, back pain, all these pains to my lupus flare-up pain. So they wouldn't let me move. If I had to go to the bathroom, they had to come in there and help me, and all I could do was lift my booty up and lay on the bedpan. So they wouldn't let me move my legs. They wouldn't let me move because, like they said, I would die instantly if one of the ones in my leg came loose, because they were so large. So I was in the hospital, like I said. They put me on a blood thinner. So I was on this blood thinner. And then when I did get out the hospital, they had a nurse come see me every day, which the nurse came to my job, you know, just to make sure my blood wasn't getting too thin, and checking me out and all that stuff there. So I want to say I was in the hospital for like a week. Then I had to go see a hematologist, which felt kind of odd, because going into a hematologist's office, it was like all old people. And here I am, only 27 years old, and this is where they was going to get like their cancer treatments. And I just felt very odd, because I was the youngest one, you know, sitting up in there. So I had to go to her. She found out, you know, they do a bunch of tests, and I did not have the blood clotting factor, thank God. Because when you have the blood clotting factor, then you have to be on blood thinners for the rest of your life. But what happened was, I did have to be on blood thinners for a year. So for a whole year, I had to give myself, you know, shots in my stomach, you know, that way I would not get a recurrent blood clot. That way I wouldn't get a reoccurrent, you know, blood clot. So I had to be on a blood thinner for a whole year, giving myself shots in my stomach I did this for a whole year. Right when my year was over, I found out that right when it came time for me to come off the blood thinner, I found out that I was pregnant with my daughter. Now, when you get pregnant, your blood gets thicker. So because I had got pregnant right when it came time for my year to be over of the blood thinner, I had to continue the blood thinner. So every time I got pregnant after that, I had to be on the blood thinner, which I got pregnant 2 more times. I have a total of 3 children. So for my last 2 pregnancies, I had to be on a blood thinner. So each time I got pregnant, I had to immediately go on a blood thinner and stay on that blood thinner for, I think, 8 weeks after I gave birth. So every time I got pregnant, I had to give myself shots in my stomach of the blood thinner. But you know, by the grace of God, I did survive getting a pulmonary embolism. I know it can kill you instantly. But what it was, the one that reached my lung was small. That one wasn't big enough, you know, to do, I mean, it caused damage, but it wasn't big enough to take my life. But the two that were in my legs, they were big enough. So that's why the hospital was concerned about one of those ones coming loose. So I was on, like I said, they immediately put me on a blood thinner, and I had to be on a blood thinner for a whole year. After that, like I said, I got pregnant and had to continue on a blood thinner. So, you know, that would be another story on continuing, you know, having babies while I have lupus. That would be another story time within itself. So, yeah, I just wanted to come on and share my story of how I survived a pulmonary embolism. And of course, all of these stories mainly take place when I was young. You know, I was in my 20s, you know. It wasn't like, you know, I was older or anything like that. I was 26, 27 when I was going through all of these things, you know, and I'm 43 now. I still go through lupus issues, but back then, when I first found out I had lupus, I really went through it. So this was my story on how I survived the pulmonary embolism and blood clots as well. If you have any questions or you want to ask me anything, you can go ahead and leave it down in the comment box. I don't have no problem, you know, answering questions about what I went through, or if it's something that you may be going through. So like I said, you can go ahead and drop me a comment in the comment box. If you don't mind, also go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you don't mind music, candles, and life stories, that's basically what my channel is about. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Also, go ahead and hit that like button, you know, if this was a story that you enjoyed or didn't mind listening to. So I will see you all on the next one.